Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and you are in a video for lesson 25 through 27 review. The goal for us today is to divide a unit fraction by a whole number, and the opposite of dividing a whole number by a unit fraction. So those are lessons 25 and 26. And lesson 27 is combining both of them through the word problems. And through our work over the last week, our Google Meet and our Nearpod yesterday, you were chosen to be in this video of the review. Whether you missed some problems over the last couple weeks, or you were a little hesitant on which one was which, or even simply making the models, which is the biggest part of them all. Okay? I want you to focus on this lesson specifically so that it can help you in your revision of your Nearpod lesson. And that's what I'd like you to do at the end of this video. Watch the entire thing, follow along with us, and then go into your Nearpod and correct the draw it. Those are the 4 problems where you had to actually sketch your models right on the screen. Okay, so those are your exit tickets today. And before we begin that, I want us to focus on, again, as our good morning message mentioned as well, that whiteboard behind me, that I want you to work hard through this video and this lesson today. Don't give up. Ask questions if you need to, whether it's in our class comments, and it's just a small group this time around, it's not everybody, or if it's a private comment with me. And then bring those same questions, if you still have them, at the end of the week through our Google Classroom. It'll be really helpful, okay? And just do the right thing. Don't try to make any shortcuts and try to be a little sneaky and say, oh, maybe Mr. Philip won't see this. I do track everything, and I'm going to hold you accountable for your work. All right, so let's get started. Now, what I'm going to show you here is our exit tickets. And these are the exit tickets you would have received if you're in the classroom. However, I think these are some great questions to work on. These are really the focus ones throughout the lesson. Now, you don't have this with you. So working on a scratch piece of paper or a left-hand side of lesson 25 or 26 or even 27, those blank pages will certainly come in handy as well. All right, so here we go. And as we mentioned once before, I'm not really worried about the language here. That tends to be a little bit confusing. I want to go ahead and just draw this using a tape diagram as the directions state. Okay, so in order to do that, as I mentioned many times, every lesson last week in our Google Meet, right, and as well as our Nearpod, it says to draw models. So each of you would start drawing a model for 5 divided by 1/2. Right? To start, draw 5 holes. Okay? So I'm going to draw 5 holes on your scratch piece of paper, the left-hand side. Even if you're doing it on a whiteboard that you have with you or a slate, go for it. Okay? But you want to make sure you draw 5 of those. Okay? And what you really want to make sure you do, all good scientists, including our mathematicians, would label everything. So make sure that you label. So I'm going to label this as my 1 hole. And I don't have to do it for every single one. You certainly can if you want to. But now this represents that this one is a hole and each of the other ones are 1 hole. All right? Next, it says I'm going to divide it, decompose it, cut it up into halves. Okay, so I'm going to take this one, I'm going to decompose it into a half, this one into a half, this one into a half, this one, and all of them. And I'm also going to label. You don't have to label every single one if you don't want to, but one of them should be labeled. So when you go back into your Nearpod video, make sure that you have some labels. All right? Now, what it's asking at this point here is how many 1/2s do I have? Right? Last week we talked about these in pictures of candy bars. Right? If this is a whole candy bar and I broke it up into two pieces, and this one's in two pieces, how many pieces would I have? And I want to give them out to some fellow geniuses. And I think we even used a creative pen here, and I say, okay, this piece is going to a genius, this piece is going to a genius, this one to a third genius, a fourth, fifth, sixth, seven, eight geniuses, nine geniuses, 10. How many geniuses are we working with? We're working with 10 geniuses. So 5 divided by 1/2 is going to give you 10. And we mentioned in our Google Meet that there's a hint for us to see if our work is reasonable. If this is a whole number to start, your answer is going to be a whole number. Okay? So if it started with a fraction, your answer would be a fraction. So keep that in mind as we do another problem. Okay? So if we scroll down to our next one, 4 divided by 1/2. Now you can attempt to solve this on your own first and then replay the video if you would like. Right? If not, you still feel a little uncomfortable, follow along with us in that scratch paper, workbook, or slate. So 4 divided by 1/2, I'm going to create 4 holes. I'm going to label my 4 holes as well. Again, would you have to label every single one of them? No, unless you really want to be proactive. I would really like that, but just you don't need to. One of them is sufficient. Right? Then you're going to divide it, decompose it into fourths. So I'm going to cut this one into 4 pieces. I'm going to cut this one into 4 pieces, and each of my other 2 into 4 pieces. I'm also going to be a responsible 5th grade genius, and I'm also going to label those. So each one is 1/4. Again, it's asking how many pieces are there? Well, this piece could go to a genius, and this one, and this one, and this one, and this one, and this one. Each of these pieces can go to a fellow genius who would love to eat that piece of candy bar or a brownie, however you want to think about it. Right? How many total pieces are there? Well, we can think that in this part, there's 4 geniuses or 4 pieces, and this one is going to be 4 pieces, or what we should say even more is just 4 parts. We have 4 parts. This one's going to have 4, and this one's going to have 4, giving us 16 total pieces to give out to the fellow geniuses. Again, notice that if it starts with a whole number, 4, our answer is also going to be in a whole number. If we looked at it really quick, just for some time-saving pieces, if we did it in a word problem, we know we're going to follow the RDW process. Right? And we would write a sentence here as well. So Miss Levernez is doing an art project with her class. She has 3-foot piece of ribbon. Ooh, that's really off. Let's be neat, a little bit neater with that. Okay, 3-foot ribbon. She gives it each student an eighth of the ribbon. Will she have enough for her 22 students? So we can even say yes or no. She will or will not have enough. Now, as we look, we have to think about what is going first. Right? What do we have? What do we know? Well, she started with 3-foot piece of ribbon. Right? And she's giving it into eighths. So we're going to decompose it into eighths. Ooh, where's my eighth? There we go. Right? So in order to do this, I'm going to show 3 holes. Right? Now notice as I'm drawing these 3 holes, I'm going to label them as well. Right? Labeling them as 1 hole. But I'm going to actually stop for a moment and think. Okay, how did I know that 3 was going first? It's not just because it's the very first detail on here. That's not always the case. You have to think about what's the hole. What are we starting with? What is she really starting with? Okay, she's not starting with an eighth of a foot. Okay, she really has in her possession 3 foot piece of ribbon. She started with it. Then she's going to cut it up to give it to all of her students. All right, keep that in mind. So I'm going to now cut this up into how many pieces? If you were thinking 8, you're correct. So I need 7 lines. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to label these as this is just 1/8. Now, how many pieces are there? Will she have enough for her 22 students? Well, in this model here, there's 8 pieces. In this model here, there's another 8 for 8 more geniuses. And this one here is cut up into 8 pieces for 8 more geniuses. So, how many pieces are there all together? She would have 8 plus 8 plus 8, or 8 times 3, giving us a basic fact of 24. Okay. Will she have enough? Yes, she will have enough. Now, once you finish this one, we'll move on to our other video looking at fractions first.